What's up? Welcome in to the latest episode of Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting podcast. It's Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. I'm Patrick Engel, joined as always by our recruiting insider at blueandgold.com, Mike Singer. And Mike, Notre Dame with a big early get in the 2022 class in Tyson Ford, the Rivals 100 defensive end. Bigger jump in the recruiting rankings to get up to number 5 or number 6, I believe, in the early rankings right now for the 2022 class. But the bigger deal here seems to be how Notre Dame swung this one back late. So, Mike, just at first, what does this mean for Notre Dame to get a guy it identified as an early target back in last spring, I believe, in the fold at this point in the class?
Yeah, it's huge, and we'll really dive into this. Patrick, the off the field fit check, the on the field fit check, the big recruiting win check, just kind of everything. The Marcus Freeman side of it, the Mike Elston side of it. There's just like so many kind of storylines / talking points that we can get into with Tyson Ford and just how big this is.
So I'll let you kind of explain how Notre Dame got this done here. But first, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button for much more content on our YouTube channel. And if you hit that thumbs up button, we'd appreciate that as well. And if you're listening on our podcast channel, if you'd be so kind, if you'd like what you hear, leave us 5 stars in a review. And if you are watching on YouTube or anywhere, and you're a listener to our podcast or videos and you're not reading blueandgold.com, we encourage you to do that. You can get 2 months of free access using the promo code IRISH60. That's IRISH60. 2 months, no cost. Great deal.
It's free. It's free. Come on, people.
Come on. Anyway, we appreciate you guys listening. And yes, if you are listeners, but not readers, we encourage you to give us a shot. But at any rate, Mike, Notre Dame kind of swung this one back in its favor late with Tyson Ford. Tell us how this came together and how Notre Dame seemingly went from looking like it was going to finish in second place to getting a big early commitment and one of its higher rated defensive commits in recent classes.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So Notre Dame offered in April of 2020, like you mentioned, Patrick, and really led the way for the recruitment most of the year. Oklahoma offers in October and stole it, really. Weekly calls with Lincoln Riley, defensive line coach there, did a really nice job in the recruitment. Oklahoma stole the lead from Notre Dame straight up. And then in mid-December, Tyson Ford announces that he is going to be committing January 18th, which of course was just this past Monday. And I kept checking in with sources and people on the OU side of the recruitment, Notre Dame side of the recruitment, and just seemed like it was Oklahoma. Yeah, Notre Dame wasn't going to give up, but it was Oklahoma. Even Friday morning, checking in with the source, was told it would take a huge, catastrophic, maybe catastrophic was a stretch, but like just a monstrous change for it not to be Oklahoma. That change happened, Patrick, because Tyson Ford ended up flipping to Notre Dame. So I have the details on kind of the backstory, all the little nuggets there that I know some of you recruitniks just love. So blueandgold.com, use that promo code IRISH60. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. Emails msinger@blueandgold.com. I'd be more than happy to talk about getting you on the site. But yeah.
I hope you know people are going to start emailing you with Tyson Ford and recruiting questions, by the way.
Bring them on. This isn't the first time I've put my email out there to the people, and I get these emails. Some good ones, some not so good ones. Hey, shout out to dude from Evanston, Patrick, which is where you're from. Got a message from Nick T on Twitter. Said he loves our YouTube stuff, and he said he we'll talk about Sebastian Cheeks here in a little bit. He said he loves Sebastian Cheeks, so I wanted to give you a quick shout out, Nick, before I forgot. What were we talking about? Tyson Ford?
Yeah, Tyson Ford.
Yeah, so it was just one of these recruitments where he came out of his room Friday and told his folks, going to Notre Dame. And then it was like everyone was very happy in the house because family wanted Notre Dame. We're going to support him no matter what school he picked, whether it was Oklahoma, Missouri, or Georgia, the other three finalists. But they wanted Notre Dame, the academics and just kind of that once in a lifetime opportunity. That's how the family felt about the Fighting Irish, and that's kind of the short of the recruitment. He was going to Oklahoma. Notre Dame led, but then he was going to Oklahoma. Told the staff there that Friday picks Notre Dame. Yeah, like I said, it was a wild recruitment, and kind of the flip of the switch down the stretch.
So my takeaway from it was, and not so much the nitty gritty, how it swung it back, like you said, as impressive as that was, but this is another big land for Notre Dame out of St. Louis. It's four straight classes now where Notre Dame has signed, enrolled, or in Tyson's case, landed a commitment from a player from the St. Louis metro area. 2019, Kyron Williams. 2020, Jordan Johnson, five-star receiver. 2021, Gabriel Rubio, 106th overall player in the class of 2021. And now Tyson Ford, who, like you said, checks in at number 64 overall in the Rivals 250 rankings. So it's been a friendly area for them to recruit. And I mean, like I said, the three of those four guys are top 110 players, and the one that isn't was a consensus freshman All-American who just ran for 1,000 yards for Notre Dame. And we'll see. It from the sound of it, this is not the only guy they're targeting out of St. Louis. Mike, I recall a couple weeks ago you ran a story on DJ Wesolak, I believe is how you say his name, the four-star edge rusher out of St. Louis. Toriano Pride, the cornerback, and four-star recruit, offers him all over. From the sound of things, those are two guys that they would still very much like to add to the class if they had the choice. And even in 2021, didn't end up working out for him, but very much involved with Ja'Kalen Johnson, the top 50 overall corner who signed with Ohio State. So just kind of another interesting development in an area that's been really good to Notre Dame, in that they've had a lot of success in going after some of the best prospects out of that area, which increasingly putting out top 100 and top 250 guys with some regularity.
You mentioned DJ Weslak. I don't have a map in front of me, but I want to say he's definitely from Missouri, but I'm not sure if it's in the St.
Okay.
Louis area. I could be mistaken. But yeah, in the state of Missouri, Toriano Pride, St. Louis Lutheran North, that's a huge target for Notre Dame. I mean, everyone under the sun is after him. But that combo of Mike Mickens and Marcus Freeman, who I should add, those two have been friends forever. I'm sure they are so jacked up to be coaching together at a stage like Notre Dame. No disrespect to Cincinnati, but Notre Dame's Notre Dame. So yeah, man, Patrick, 2019, Kyron Williams, stud. I mean, Jordan Johnson. Obviously, we still have much to learn about him and what the impact he could have at Notre Dame. Expectations are clearly sky high because, anytime Notre Dame, had an incomplete pass, everyone was whining about why isn't Jordan Johnson seeing the field. So certainly want to see more from him than that 2021 class. You mentioned Gabriel Rubio. Notre Dame fans are just going to love this kid. If you want to know how committed this kid is to Notre Dame, obviously he's already signed with the Irish. His family now has a house in South Bend. So yeah, I mean, just how awesome is that? I mean, this is not a kid I expect to see in the transfer portal. So, and now Tyson Ford. Do want to add he's never been to Notre Dame. He had never been to Oklahoma, never been to Georgia. He had been to Missouri. So if visits open up, Tyson Ford will obviously get to Notre Dame. Will he maybe still want to take a trip to Oklahoma? How does Notre Dame feel about that? Will Notre Dame change Tyson's mind if and when visits open up? So just something to keep an eye on with Tyson Ford.
So the Pod Like a Champion research team looked into it. DJ Wesolak is from Boonville, Missouri. It's about halfway between St. Louis and Kansas City. off of I-70 by Columbia. So there you go. But either way, as far as Missouri being a friendly area for Notre Dame, the point stands, even though,
Right.
yes, let the record show a correction to the record there that DJ Wesolak is not from the 314, like a lot of these other guys Notre Dame has targeted in Missouri.
I've
But
had to really study up. Covering Notre Dame, it's so national. I know so much more about the United States of America covering Notre Dame than any other school I covered before this job. So appreciate you
so
doing it.
that makes me think of a segment we could do here. So Notre Dame recruits nationally, of course. If I gave you an area code, like
No,
what if I just did all these area codes and like, all right, put this one up. Do you know where it's from? Like, I mean, because if I gave you I don't know, a Virginia one. I mean, I'm past schools you cover or what, like Oregon State and South Florida, they're probably not in there very often.
it
Either way,
would.
I don't know. I'm thinking that's a good test of just how much you've been able to pick
You're
up here.
on the right track, but I don't think it would be area codes because I don't remember these kids' phone numbers. I just plug them into my phone. But there's something there. Like, give me a random city that Notre Dame's recruited in the past couple years, and then be like, Mike, what's the biggest city next to this? Something like
Okay.
that, maybe. Like Chester.
Okay.
Like, where, that one would
Right.
be obvious. That's
Sure.
Chris Terry's down. But there's
Bingo.
something in there. I like it, Patrick. Let's do that for a future segment.
The geography dork in me is very excited to do any kind of game like this. I think I could pass the area code test though.
Okay.
But we'll all right. We'll
305.
we'll put a segment on this at some
305.
point. Yeah.
Give me 305.
305 is Miami.
There. All right. I'm intrigued.
Come on, Mr. 305, Pitbull. Who doesn't know
I
that?
know. I
Say that for
gave you
someone
an
else
easy
can't
one.
stand his music.
I gave you an
All
easy
right. So Tyson Ford, biggest early commitment in Notre Dame's 2022 class. Just when you look at, all right, how it happened and ranking. But let's talk a little bit more about who might be next and just kind of where you see this class overall as it stacks up. So as far as next up commitments you might see on the horizon or guys you think Notre Dame is in a good spot for whenever they might decide to make a decision, tell us who you got.
So I will be writing this article on Wednesday at blueandgold.com. I do this after every commitment. Who's next? 5 commit candidates for Notre Dame. So I will break this down in an article on Wednesday, but I will give you 3 names that will absolutely be in there. And they've appeared in past Who's Next articles at Blue and Gold. Sebastian Cheeks. Look, Marcus Freeman is coming in here, and he's not playing games. Now that I mentioned Freeman, I want to go back really quickly, Patrick, with him and Tyson Ford. Freeman was kind of the cherry on top of that recruitment. Tyson Ford was maybe leaning Notre Dame, and then Freeman kind of came in and put the stamp on the potential, or the stamp on the silent flip commitment. I don't know what you want to call that, but so he did a nice job. Mike Elston has been rumored for that Purdue job, which I believe Purdue's now filled their defensive staff. But it was kind of like a sign of Elston is sticking with Notre Dame with how hard he went after Tyson Ford down the stretch. So, but who could be that 6th commitment of the class? Sebastian Cheeks, been speaking very frequently with Marcus Freeman. That's the linebacker from Evanston. Shout out to
847
Patrick.
strong. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean that dude's a stud. Sebastian Cheeks, man, so excited about seeing what's next for his football career. I think we've only seen it was like 4 games before he got hurt as a sophomore. No junior season so far. So, I mean, and I know he is just really looking forward to showing people what he's got. So Sebastian Cheeks, great relationship with Notre Dame. If he's going to commit, it's going to be the Fighting Irish. In terms of if he were to commit in the next, let's say, 20 days, I think it would be Notre Dame. Feel strongly that he has a Fighting Irish lean at this point. Next guy, let's go to quarterbacks, because at some point Notre Dame has to land a quarterback, Patrick. And if a quarterback's going to commit in the next 20 days, I would say it's Steve Angeli. They've only got 2 offers out. You have Steve Angeli, quarterback from New Jersey, and Gavin Wimsatt, a quarterback from Kentucky. Both are 4-star prospects. Wimsatt's in the Rivals 100, I believe, right around number 50 in the country, and Angeli is ranked outside of the national 250 rankings, but again, as a 4-star prospect. Seen Angeli in person, like him a lot. Seen Wimsat just on tape. And he looks great as well. Kind of a 1A, 1B situation, the way I see it. But Angeli has been on campus. He made a trip out to Chicago in December, and drove over to Notre Dame while he was in the Midwest. Wimsat certainly a possibility as well. We covered him in our weekly recruiting wrap on our YouTube page this past Friday. Notre Dame honestly might be in the driver's seat in that recruitment if it's not Kentucky. So both quarterbacks you want to keep an eye on, but right now I think Steve Angeli is the more likely option. And then Billy Schrauth. Billy Schrauth's been on this list for frickin' forever, since the summer, which feels like forever ago, but also like last week at the same time with how, this COVID year has been. But Billy Schrauth, 4-star offensive lineman from Wisconsin. If he picks the Irish and signs with Notre Dame, he will be the first Notre Dame player in, I think, 16 years from Wisconsin, which is just crazy to think about, that Notre Dame has not landed a player from Wisconsin in that long. So Billy Schrauth, I would consider a strong Notre Dame lean, and have had a future cast pick in for him for quite some time. So there's 3 names to keep an eye on. If you follow Notre Dame recruiting very closely, shouldn't be a surprise that I named off those 3 prospects. But now that I've said those 3, it's probably going to be just some rando that's going to be the 6th commitment.
Is it a Wisconsin player or is it a Wisconsin lineman? I'm not sure.
I don't know what I said, but it's Wisconsin player. Yeah.
Wow. So not a receiver or linebacker or quarterback or nothing. Not even a long snapper. Wow. Okay. I knew it had been a while since they signed a lineman. Correct me if neither of us were covering the team at this point. So if I'm wrong, I'm sure you guys will yell at me in the comments for this, but I feel like Notre Dame was, after Ben Bredesen, the guard out of there, pretty aggressively, and this would have been 5 years ago, ended up at Michigan. But I mean, I don't know of any guys recently that they've been in position for there. I mean, until of course Wisconsin, where they've got 3 guys in the 2022 class on the offensive line alone that they very much like to land.
Right. Yeah. So if you're in the comments on our YouTube page or you're listening via podcast, tell us who the last player from Wisconsin for Notre Dame was.
Yeah, trivia timing for the people here.
I know who it is, and that's, I had to talk to Lou about this. Of course, I was clicking refresh 2018 roster, 2017 roster, for Notre Dame on the UND.com page, and I was just like, screw this, I'm calling Lou. And so the answer is from Lou, so that's a pretty good source.
You're good there. But anyway, Billy Schrauth seemingly in a good spot to end that trend if in fact Notre Dame and him kind of keep on the route that recruitment seems to be going here. But okay, Mike, let's get to what you've been writing about for most of the last couple of weeks here, and you touched on it with Sebastian Cheeks, and that's Marcus Freeman. We heard right away that big expectations for him as a recruiter. And look, Brian Kelly in his university release, I mean, look, the quotes in these things are sometimes really not worth that much. But I thought it stood out that he made a point to say, like, he's known as one of the elite recruiters in coaching. And just go look at some of the, the recent classes that he helped put together at Cincinnati. And you see that they signed the top group of 5 class in 2018, 2020, and 2021. 4 defensive 4-star recruits in there. And then had 2 guys committed in the 2022 class who were Rivals 250s players before he left. So that stuff kind of speaks for itself. But Mike, I know you've gotten to talk to a lot of guys who Freeman has reached out to, or a couple new offers that he's dished out since he got here. So what are the reviews from the recruits of Marcus Freeman as a recruiter?
They're strong. I'll say that. And you mentioned Kelly's press release, or his quotes in that press release Notre Dame put out that mirrored what we were hearing, is that with this defensive coordinator hire, Brian Kelly wants a really strong recruiter, which, I remember talking to Luce Emoji about that, and we were like, yeah, well, of course. What does Notre Dame want? A poor recruiter here? But it's clear that they really did value a strong recruiter with the hire. And I was listening back to our podcast from last week, Patrick, and one thing I said on there was I'm curious how much in the day to day Marcus Freeman is going to be with recruiting because, Clark Lee was not a super active day to day recruiter. It was a lot with Nick Lazinski, the defensive analyst, did a lot of those responsibilities. Well, week and a half, what is it? Week and a half, 2 weeks, we're into this, and I can already say that Marcus Freeman is very much in the day to day. We'll see during the football season. I know some of the coaches, not just at Notre Dame but across the country, don't recruit as much in season. But from what I've seen in the past week from Marcus Freeman, I think I need to send him a letter in the mail and thank him for keeping me so busy and for giving me so many things to write about because he's just crushing it. Um, if you're a blueandgold.com subscriber, you read the Lucky Charms post from Monday night where I wrote about a 5-star recruit that Marcus Freeman is just like, you eliminated Notre Dame from your top group? I don't care. I'm still going to recruit you. And I know Notre Dame fans love hearing that. That is just music to their ears that this guy is. I mean, what does everyone want? An aggressive recruiter. And that's Marcus Freeman. Give a hint for something I wrote in the Gold Standard on Tuesday afternoon. Usually that's a Monday article at Blue and Gold, but had to post it on Tuesday because the Tyson Ford news on Monday pushed it back. But Sebastian Cheeks, 4-star linebacker, quote, Freeman told me he was going to be applying the pressure. Sebastian Cheeks wants to wait until after his junior season to make it a commitment, but Marcus Freeman's, nah, man, I want you now. So that it's just kind of like a breath of fresh air. Clark Lee was a great recruiter in his own way and style, but Marcus Freeman is an excellent recruiter, certainly with his style. So there's a lot to be excited about. One thing I don't like, Patrick, is new coaches coming in and they are just the new biggest thing. And wow, look at what he's doing. He's bringing so much of this and that, and then in a year or two, everyone hates him. Like, is that true with fans? It's you're the shiny toy coming in, and then in a year or two, I don't really like you anymore. That's kind of how I always feel it goes. So I'm hesitant to just throw so much hype at Marcus Freeman because when things are great, things are terrible. The truth is somewhere in the middle. That's what we always say. But I'm very much on this Marcus Freeman hype train, and I might even be the conductor. So, all aboard, guys.
I wrote about this when he was hired, and mainly my focus on it from the team side was that just the fact that Notre Dame didn't finish in second for a big target and beat out LSU was a big thing in and of itself, but it did need some kind of like dynamic recruiter from this hire, right? Or at least like, all right, I mean, you just coming off of the whole bigger picture here of, all right, lost to Alabama for a number of reasons, but you could see the difference in the skill talent and why Notre Dame played the way it played with trying to ball control it and keep away, power run, all that stuff, just because it didn't think it'd be able to win a track meet or it didn't have the skill position juice or defensive backfield receivers, all of that. We've rehashed that enough, but between that and then losing a really well-regarded coordinator in his own right in Clark Lee, like needed something to one keep the defense where it's been, but add some kind of juice, right? And I think this is pretty much what you had in mind as far as just impact and how he relates to guys from what they've told you, Mike. And look, we'll see. I mean, we'll get a better idea of that in 11 months when this class is signed, or at least most of it is.
Right.
And of course, we won't know about the other task he has as far as how the defense plays until September and October in the fall and everything. But just when you're thinking about what they needed from this hire and how they can push up in the recruiting rankings and try to at least somehow get closer to the Alabamas and whatever. For as much progress as they've made, Alabama seems to have continued to raise the ceiling there and keep telling them to keep. Hey, you have more ground to make up and more, even if you still feel like you're coming on and everything. But I mean, even then, like we heard Brian Kelly talk about it after the Rose Bowl, and he did mention recruiting. And then if you want to go back to his comments before the Camping World Bowl a year ago, with we need to do some things to push up into that top 5 to 10 with more consistency. I don't know. This just kind of strikes me as like a real notable step in that direction. And again, we'll see what happens. When we have a clearer idea of how many of these top targets are able to land, or who they're able to get back in there for that might not have been a target who looked like it was going to actually pick Notre Dame and pick some, or how many times they're able to beat an Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson or whoever for a recruit. But anyway, I say this to say that recruiting was a big part of this, and it just seems like Freeman has the chops to help push that part forward.
If we are entering the 2023 football season and Marcus Freeman is still Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this guy is just destined to be a head coach. I thought that he was going to stay at Cincinnati until he got his head coach. I thought it might have been next season. So I was a little surprised that he took kind of the step in between Cincinnati and head coach. People are throwing around, fans on our blueandgold.com message board, a coach in waiting thing. And I haven't heard that term actually used in quite some time in reality. But so I'm not going to speculate on him because I feel like Brian Kelly has a few more years at Notre Dame. But, who knows? But again, if we're entering that 2023 season and he's still at Notre Dame as DC, I'll be surprised. Me speaking right now, because again, I think he's going to be a head coach. So my point of saying that is these next 2 years, I think he's just going to crush it in recruiting. And then those kids he brings in probably won't even play for Marcus Freeman, but it's going to benefit Notre Dame. Like with Harry Heastand, people talk about, he brought in a lot of these guys, and now Jeff Quinn is reaping the benefits of, right? Your Liam Eichenbergs and some of these guys. I think that might be a similar situation with Marcus Freeman. Kind of like back with the Golden State Warriors. It was Mark Jackson's team, and then Steve Kerr came in and won the championship, or even the Bucks years ago with what was it? Tony Dungy built those teams, and then John Gruden won the Super Bowl. Unless I have that backwards. That was a long time ago, but I just remember that being a thing.
That's right.
So I think it might be one of those situations. So I fully expect, again, I am all aboard the Marcus Freeman hype train. Greatest thing since sliced bread. And Patrick, you're laughing. Good. Yeah, that was a joke. Sliced bread's still pretty great. So yeah.
Overrated.
I'm sorry.
I just prefer getting a whole loaf of bread off the shelf and just biting into it and just, I don't know. Whatever happened to that? Sliced bread's overrated. No, I don't know. I'm on an anti-bread kick right now. So
keto.
Before
keto
we turn this into what's that?
Are you on keto diet?
I just don't eat a lot of carbs. Bread is carbs. So, all right, before we turn this into a diet-centric podcast, which nobody wants to hear, let's go into a little bit more on Freeman here. And yes, I think, Mike, if he's here in 2020 or not here in 2023, that'd be obviously a good thing for him because he's probably a head coach, and good for Notre Dame because he delivered on what you expected by and large. And I guess that's how I'm looking at that is if he's gone in 2 years, it was probably a pretty good 2 years for him and for Notre Dame. But he has extended a couple of offers to new linebackers, or at least Notre Dame has, and certainly wouldn't have done it without his approval and thinking, yeah, I like that kid. A couple of 4-star guys, Lander Barton out of Salt Lake City, and Jalen Sneed, top 100 player out of Hilton Head, South Carolina. Mike, what do we got to know here as far as early interest in Notre Dame and just about these two in general?
Yeah, so it was actually Sneed received the offer from Freeman. And we have both of these guys' rivals player cards pulled up on the screen. So Sneed from Hilton Head, South Carolina, when I saw that offer go out, I was pretty pumped because I'm based in Atlanta. It's about a 4-hour drive. I will not mind going out and covering Jalen Sneed in Hilton Head, South Carolina. That is a great spot to be. So like I was saying earlier, like Marcus Freeman doesn't really care who you are. If he wants you, he's going after you. So Sneed ranked as a top 100 recruit in the country. Actually, Freeman offered him while he was still the coach at Cincinnati back in November 2019. So this is a guy that Freeman's known about for over a year, but Sneed was never going to Cincinnati with some of his offers that he has. Alabama, Florida, all these schools in the South. Should be noted, one of the coaches at Hilton Head High School, and I have more details about that in the gold standard that I mentioned earlier that posted on Tuesday. One of the coaches at Sneed's High School has known Freeman for like 15 or 20 years. And I will have another separate article on that coming up in the future. So that could be, something that plays into Notre Dame's favor. Sneed's listed at 6'1", 207. He is someone who could be an edge rusher. He could be a inside backer. He really could be anything. That kid is a stud. Pop on his tape, and you will like what you see. And then Lander Barton, this was an offer that Brian Polian dished out, and of course, that is Notre Dame's recruiting coordinator, special teams coordinator, and recruits the West Coast for Notre Dame. So Polian offers, I believe it was last Friday, and then Freeman, again being Marcus Freeman, the dog he is on the recruiting trail, got in touch with Barton as well to introduce himself and learn more about Barton and talk about Notre Dame. So like both of these offers, there was 3 new corner offers last week that we've touched on. I mean, yeah, Notre Dame is being aggressive on the recruiting front. Again, I know that's what Notre Dame fans love to hear.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens, 2 Huber Heights High School alums doing work on the trail. And I'll tease it tomorrow. I've got a lengthy thing coming out on Marcus Freeman from talking to a few folks close to him. So again, check that out on blueandgold.com. So that's going to do it for this episode of Pod Like a Champion. We will talk to you next week, coming to you weekly, most weeks here during the off season. So stay tuned for that. And until then, take care.